names from CSS on here, so that's great to see. And a lot of new names too, so that's always good to see as well. So what you'll get out of this presentation is it's mainly designed for people who are currently going into their first job competition. So that way you'll learn the ins and outs and all the logistics of things. So I won't focus too much on how to properly prepare for an interview per se, but more help you organize how to apply for jobs, when you should be checking My Success, and all those little nuances that comes with co-op when you have questions for applications. And in terms of today's content, we'll go through 4 main stages. So first, I'm going to give a big information load on what to expect for co-op. It's going to be a lot of information, but I promise it will make sense, especially once we get to the ranking day slide, because that's when, at least when I was learning everything, that's when it really helped cemented everything for me. After that, we'll go over some frequently asked questions that I usually see in the Discord and then I ask their staff members. We'll have a CSS member describe their experience to give you tips. And at the very end, we'll open it up to you and I can answer any questions you have as well. So, what's important to know about the job competition is that there's 3 rounds you'll participate in. The main round, which is what you're currently in right now, and then rounds 2, and then round 3. So if you're currently competing for a summer 2022 work position and you don't see any job postings on My Success right now, what you probably want to do is message co-op at UWindsor.ca right away, because you probably don't qualify for one of these 3 competition eligibility criteria. So first, you had to have completed your work term job competition form found in My Success. That was already due earlier this week. You need to have a 0 balance owing to the University of Windsor on your tuition. So if you have a positive amount on there and you still owe money, that could be one of the reasons why you don't see any job postings. And lastly, if you're an international student, you have to have submitted your proof of application for a co-op work permit. Without it, we can't have you view any job postings on My Success. So if you're currently in the job competition because you're looking for a summer 2022 internship or co-op placement and you don't see anything on My Success, it's likely because you're not meeting one of these 3 criteria, and you'll want to message co-op at uwindsor.ca to see how we could fix it. So going to more details about the rounds, as I mentioned, there's going to be our main round, which is round 1, and then rounds 2 and round 3. So the main round is going to be the big round, because this is when everyone first gets exposed to all the different job postings that are available for summer 2022 on My Success. And if you've already been noticing, the first rounds of postings were actually uploaded yesterday, Wednesday. So you're going to notice from here, from January 12th to February 16th, every Wednesday following from here out, every Wednesday at 9 a.m., you'll see new job postings upload to My Success. And then the Tuesday following that week, those job postings will close. And it'll be another chart, another slide to help see it. But just remember that every Wednesday at 9 a.m., new jobs will be posted. And Tuesday at 9 a.m., those job postings will be taken down. So it's going to be a cycle that repeats. Now, what's unique just to the main round is if you do have an interview for any of these job postings, they'll be taking place anywhere between January 24th to February 14th. This is because we have a large amount of candidates applying for different jobs. And since everyone is applying for so many different periods, we have to do this for the main round to make sure that employers can hire on people early, and we're able to organize all of our students too. So once all interviews are done during the interview period, we'll find out your results to see how you did on those interviews on what's called its ranking day. So that's going to take place on Thursday, February 17th at 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. So this is a very important date, because if you don't sign into My Success on ranking day and you don't give your rankings to your employers, then it puts you in a bad spot, because then it leaves us to assign you to all the leftovers. And I'll go more into detail about ranking day later. And what's important to know about the job competition throughout all of it, so from January to April, is that you're only allowed to decline 2 employment offers in the entire competition. So 1 in the main round, and the other being in rounds 2 and 3. And once again, it'll make a little more sense as we go through. So, round 2. If you weren't able to find a placement during round 1, don't worry, it happens. I think the stat is like 60% of people only get a job in round 1 or something like that. Don't quote me too much on it, but we do have a lot of people that go into round 2, and that takes place February 23rd to March 29th. So once again, every Wednesday during that period, 9 a.m., you'll see new job postings uploaded, On Tuesdays, those job postings will go down. What's important to know is that job postings will be a little more limited this time around because the larger group is already out, but you will see some new ones get added into there too. So there's still a lot of hope. Unlike the main round, interview periods will just be ongoing. So if you get selected for an interview, the employer will most likely reach out to you, or you'll see it on My Success. You'll go for the interview, we'll receive your ranking, and then we'll send you an email, and you have to confirm within 24 hours whether or not you want to accept the position or not. And then, unfortunately, if you don't get a job once it comes to round 2, then you go into round 3. And this takes place from March 30th to May 30th. So in this case, you no longer apply to jobs, and what happens is you send us a form explaining your preferences, your skill sets, and what you look for in a job, and we'll take your resume and we'll apply to jobs based on your behalf, based on that form you signed out. So from there, if we do hear anything back, we'll let you know of any interviews you have, and once again, we'll send you email offers saying like, hey, you know what? You did great on your interview. They want to hire you on. Do you want to accept the position? And once again, you'll have 24 hours to accept. So that's a big overview of what the job competition is, and we'll go into a little more details in each round right now. So once again, round 1, this already started on Wednesday, and as you can see, every Wednesday at 9 a.m., new job postings will be uploaded. Every Tuesday at 9 a.m., those job postings will be shut down, so you can't apply to them anymore. Some job postings may transfer from week to week, so they might repeat, but just know that you could lose out of a chance. So if you don't apply in time, then unfortunately, you're out of luck there. And when you are applying to jobs, there's 2 different ways of doing it. You'll either apply directly through My Success, and that way employers will be nice about it. And secondly is the less nice way I like to see it, is where you'll be directed to the company website, and you might be forced to write everything from your resume into their own system, which is a big pain in the butt, and I hate when employers do it, but it's the reality of it. And to ensure you get a position, especially for co-op, we always try to recommend that you apply for as many positions as possible to increase your chances of securing a placement. Especially if it's your first time in the job competition, just keep in mind you might be competing with 3rd year and 4th year students as well, who already have at least one co-op experience under their belt, or they already have additional projects within their grasp too. So especially if it's your first internship opportunity you're going for, we always recommend apply to as many as you can and making sure you're creating quality applications for them. Because you don't want to be left in the spot where you only applied for 2, and then they both denied you, and then you're in a tough spot. So the more you apply to, the more job opportunities will be available for you. So going a little more once again to main round. So this is unique to it, where you have your interview stage. These are once again from January 24th to February 14th. You'll receive the notification through My Success that you have to check, and it'll tell you the exact date and time for when your interviews will be taking place. So what you want to do is starting on January 19th, just check My Success twice daily, because that's when you'll start to see whether employers want to interview you or not. What is important is that if you do get selected to an interview, you must interview it, go forward with the interview. And if you decide to not show up, that's actually going to count as one of your declines. So the only time we can change an interview is if there's an exam or you have another interview from a player already set. We'll talk about it a little later, but just know that you should be attending all your interviews. And as I mentioned earlier, ranking day will take place on Thursday, February 17th, and this is from 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. So after doing all your interviews, this is where you find the results to see how well you did, and then you can start to rank on who you actually want to work for as well. And you can see how employers ranked you too. And then once again, just as a big reminder, you're only allowed to decline 2 positions in the entire job competition. So once during ranking day, during the main round, and then once when we start to send you those 24-hour emails of when you receive a response. So similar to round 1, when we go into round 2, once again, every Wednesday at 9 a.m., new job postings are available, and the Tuesday following that Wednesday, they'll start to close. So during cycle 2, there is no ranking day and there's no interview period. You'll just be emailed interviews either from the employer or notified on My Success as applications get submitted. And we'll email you back on whether or not you received the position or not. And you have to give us a 24-hour notice, or we'll give you 24 hours to respond on whether or not you want to accept it or not. And once again, when you do apply through jobs, it's either going to be directly through My Success, or you'll have to go to each company website. Now, as mentioned in round 3, so this is March 30th to May 30th. So once again, if you weren't successful in round 1 and you weren't successful in round 2, this is when it comes to us at the co-op office. So once again, step 1 is you'll fill out a job competition information form, and this is going to tell us what jobs you're looking for. So maybe you don't want to go to IT and you want to focus more on programming, and maybe you want to focus more on game design, so you want to use your Unity skills, and maybe you don't want to leave Windsor, for example. So knowing all that information helps us to apply to different jobs that are still available. Then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to create a round 3 resume. So it's going to be a general resume you create to a dummy job posting. It will send that resume to those employers that you're interested in, or that we think would be a good fit based on your preferences. And then once we found out that you have an interview or you're matched, we'll give you emails, or my success will let you know, or the employer can reach out to you as well to let you know you have an interview. And once again, you'll have 24 hours to accept if you get offered the position. Awesome. So that kind of covers how round 1, 2, and 3 works. And this is going to show you what you'll see on my success. So once you start applying to jobs and you're trying to see what your status of each role is, there's going to be one of 4 things you'll see. So you'll either see application submitted. So this means we haven't heard back from the company yet. 2, being not selected for the interview. That means your application was received and the employer decided not to go forward to interview you. Number 3 means the position is canceled. Now there's a lot of different reasons that go for this. Either there could be a budget cut, or maybe they're not in a partnership with the University of Windsor anymore, or maybe they're just trying to go internal for a hire instead. So don't take it personally as in, hey, they didn't really like you. It's just there's external factors that cause the position to be canceled. And then the last one, which you want to see, is that you were selected for an interview. So if you were selected for an interview, you'll see the date, location. Usually it's going to be online, so either through Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, or even Google Hangouts, whatever the different companies use. And you'll get that information to prepare for that interview. So, as I mentioned earlier, when you want to see if you did get interviewed or not, you will see on My Success, or the employer will directly contact you. So this could be either they give you a phone call or through email. So what we do recommend is at least check My Success twice daily for interviews. If you're like me, you're probably checking it like 20 times a day, because you never know when something could pop up. And if you do get contacted by the employer directly, what you should do is reach out to coop@uwindsor.ca. So tell us right away, so that way we can help with planning everything. And what you want to do is when talking to them, agree on a time, date, and location for the interview. Ask for the interviewer's name and contact information. Note that all interviews are now conducted remotely. Some of them might be in person because COVID restrictions are all over the place. But just know that if you do get invited, there will be safety protocols in place. And once the interview is scheduled, students must notify us by email and include all those details we mentioned earlier. So, what happens if you have a conflict with your interview? There's only 2 instances when you can move your interview time. One is if you have an exam during that time. In that case, email us at coop@uwindsor. We'll have no problems with being able to move your interview. Or if you already have another interview scheduled by another employer. So let's say, I don't know, Green Shield already asked you for an interview and you got another email 2 days later from Vistaprint asking you for the interview at the same time. Green Shield will be the first one you'll keep because they're the ones who asked first. So what you want to do is email us and we'll help move your Vistaprint interview around to accommodate. After that, for interview attendance, like we said, it's important that you do attend every single interview that you do get offered. This is because employers are assuming in their mind, if you're applying for the job, that means you're showing interest for it. So if you don't end up going to the interview, it doesn't make a lot of sense on their end, and it could kind of ruin the university's reputation a bit, right? Because then they're like, oh, UWindsor students just don't show up to interviews, and that could look really bad. But of course, you are allowed to change it if you have one of the conflicts we discussed earlier. And in terms of the location of an interview, a majority of them will be done online or through a phone call. In the case if it is in person, once again, just know they will put those safety measures in place for you. All right, and here's the really important one. At least when I was learning how the whole co-op thing works, ranking day, once I learned this, everything started to make a lot of sense. So, once you're done all your interviews, you find out your results on Thursday, February 17th from 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. So when you log into My Success, you'll be able to see all your results. And how it works is you're going to see all the employer rankings, so how they rated you, along with your rankings. And based on how the employer ranked you and how you rank them, it's going to determine your match. So the lower the sum, the higher the chances of matching. And I'll go through an example in a bit to really help emphasize that. So when you log into My Success, you can see one of three options an employer will give you. So you're either going to see not ranked, and that means the employer doesn't want to interview you, or you interviewed, I should say, but they don't want to move forward. Number one ranking, that means you're the ideal candidate, so the employer really wants to hire you. And then next, you'll see ranked. So that means you interviewed well, but you're not their first choice. And since it says ranked, you won't know if you're either their second, third, fourth, or fifth choice either. All you know is that you got ranked for them. So then on your turn, so between 7:30 a.m. and 1 p.m., you get to start to rank the employers you want to work with. So what's important is you can only give one number one ranking to an employer. So ideally, you want to give this to the one you really want to work for. And if you saw that an employer ranked you as number one, then that's generally something you want to put a 1 next to as well, because they'll definitely give you a match because you're their number one choice. Following that, you can give as many 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s as you want afterwards. The only thing is you can't skip numbers. So I can't, if I had 5 employers, I can't give 1, 2, 2, 5, 5. And that's because I need to at least give a 3 and a 4 before I go to 5. So I hope that makes sense. And you'll see it later on too. And as we mentioned earlier, you're only allowed to give 1 decline during the main round. So if you got ranked for a position and after interviewing you're like, you know what, I really don't want to work for this company, that's where you put a not interested, aka your decline. And what I recommend is to actually use your decline, because since you do have 2 in the entire competition, your decline from the main ranking day round won't transfer over to rounds 2 and 3. So I would just say, just use it automatically during your first round if you really, really don't want to work with the company, because that way you'll be able to exercise that right. So what you'll see is an example. So let's say it's February 17th, logged into My Success, I applied to 6 different companies, and here's how each employer ranked me. So Nintendo, I was their number one choice. Awesome, that's great to hear. PlayStation, they don't want anything to do with me. Okay, I feel bad. Microsoft, they ranked me. I don't know how they ranked me. All I know is I'm not their number one choice, but I could be their number 2, 3, 4, 5. EA Games also interviewed me, so they also made me their number one choice. That's great to see. And I also have Atlas and Naughty Dog who ranked me. Once again, I don't know how they ranked me. All I know is that they thought I did a good job. So when I started to put in my rankings, the only one I can't actually give a ranking for would be PlayStation. And that's because they don't want to have anything to do with me after the interview. So when I put in my rankings, I can only use one number one, and I'm going to put that for Nintendo. Skip PlayStation because I can't. And when I look at my other options, this is when I start to evaluate, okay, where do I want to work next? So when I look at my options, Atlas and Naughty Dog, they're both pretty good companies for me. I'm like, okay, I like Persona 5. The Last of Us is a pretty good series. Sure, I'd love to work with them. So I'd put them for number 2. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd put as many number 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s, as long as I'm putting them in consecutive order. So I couldn't go 1, 2, 7, 7, for example, because I'm missing numbers in between. Then for my third choice, I think I would put Microsoft there. So once again, I don't know how they ranked me, but I'm just going to say, you know what? I don't really want to work for them, but I'm going to put a number 3 just in case. Now, as for EA Games, they actually put me as their number 1 choice. But after I interviewed, I found out I absolutely don't want to work there because they said I'll be working on the next FIFA or Madden game. And I'm like, nope, you know what? Sport games aren't really for me. So I'm going to put my not interested and my only decline I can use for the main round there. So now for this part, this is what happens in my success. So you don't see this part. So in my success, they'll actually know what the ranking is. So Microsoft ranked me as number 2, Atlas is number 4, and Naughty Dog is number 2 as well. So now what they're going to do is add up their rankings. So for Nintendo, 1 plus 1 is 2. Microsoft, 2 plus 3 is 5. For Atlas, 4 plus 2 is 6. And for Naughty Dog, 2 plus 2 is 4. So once again, PlayStation, they don't count it because I wasn't chosen. In EA games, they won't calculate it in my success because I'm not interested in the rule. And as I mentioned earlier, the lower the sum, the more of a match you'll get with it. So since 2 is my lowest sum for my rankings, I'll likely be the candidate who is hired for the Nintendo role. And especially because I was their number 1 ranking, and I also gave them as my number 1, then it's very likely that I'll get the Nintendo role. And that's how ranking day really works. And the reason we only do it during the main round is because we have so many students who are applying, it's really difficult to get to it. So to give reference, last semester when you took part in Transform, we had somewhere between 500 to 600 students across all programs participate. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of people who are applying for jobs. Of course, they're not all computer science students, but my success helps us automate that process so we're not doing it manually. So, how to be successful in the job competition. As I mentioned earlier, apply to as many positions as possible, but do remember quality over quantity. Sure, you can apply to 100 jobs, but if you're sending the same resume to all 100, it's not looking the best for you. Just because employers are going to be looking for those differences and they want to see those skill sets. Because especially if you do have competition from UWindsor, along with other universities applying for the same roles, it's going to be very competitive. So you have to differentiate yourself. Also, be flexible in terms of positions. So sure, it's not going to be your dream job, so it may not be Google or one of the FANG companies you want to apply for, but especially if it's your first company, do be open to it, because, at least for me, I know anyway, for my current role, I took a very, very entry-level position back in VIP, the career office. Here I am now at the co-office working full-time, so just be very open to those entry-level roles as well, even if it's an IT role, because you never know where something could take you, and the connections you can make can really help you too. Next, you can also want to make sure you customize your applications for every job. So once again, quality over quantity. Get out of town if you're able to. So I know for me, if I wanted to participate in co-op when I was still a student, I probably couldn't get out of Windsor because I still have family responsibilities at home, so I completely get it. But if you wanted to go to Toronto, another province, or even internationally as well, those are always options. Always get involved in your job search and participate in a guided job search as well. We'll talk about that in a bit. So if you're on My Success and you're like, you know what, I don't like any of these job postings, you can actually start to go online and find your own jobs too. There's a few criteria we're going to talk about for that. Of course, don't do it alone as well. So use your resources, being co-op, talk to other students on Discord, and reach out to your program co-op coordinators too, because we're more than happy to help look over your cover letter, resume, and help you prep for those interviews too. Other tips as well is make sure to get organized, because if you're going to be applying to a lot of jobs, make sure you have an Excel sheet or some other document available to help you organize who you applied to when, and to organize when you have your interviews as well. Always recommend, don't give up. I know imposter syndrome might pop in where you might think like, you know what? All my other friends are getting jobs and interviews. I'm not getting anything. Don't worry, just keep on pursuing. When I interviewed a lot of local companies in Windsor especially, their bars aren't high for it. A lot of them actually just ask soft skill questions during the interviews too. So explain a time when you worked in a team, or describe a time when you had to problem solve. Stuff like that, because they do understand these are co-op positions, and especially if you're a second year and it's your first time going into it, they understand your situation. So of course, I always recommend, if you're having a hard time, go for more local companies, as they're a little, I don't want to say easier to get into, but the bar won't be as high. But if you're going for a more national company such as CIBC, RBC, well, now you're dealing with competition at Waterloo, Toronto, Ryerson, and a bunch of different other people as well. So the skill set's going to be a lot higher. Along with that, believe in yourself. Get your driver's license if you're able to as well, because that way it'll help you get into places that there isn't a bus route. And make sure you learn new skills in between classes too. So something I would even recommend even this weekend before classes start is go on YouTube or online and search up projects you can do in a weekend. Sure, you might spend 8 hours of your Saturday, which sure sucks a little because it's your weekend, but you'll have that project that you can use for the rest of your future to put on your resume. So it's something I really encourage you to do now, especially before the semester starts. So as I mentioned earlier, you could go into what's known as a guided job search. So a guided job search is when you don't look at job postings on My Success and you start to look at job postings elsewhere. So you're allowed to do both at the same time while you're looking for a job, of course. But just keep in mind that once you accept a position, you're committed to it, which we'll talk about later as well. So if you're looking for job placements outside of My Success, this definitely helps you in finding a placement because once again, you're applying to more jobs. You can also reach out to your own personal network to see if there's any openings in the hidden job market that are to aware about. And if you need that help, you can always contact one of your employee relations coordinators, in this case, either Bill or Jeff, and they'll help you get your first hand on how to do that job search. One important thing to keep in mind, though, is if you are looking for something on your own and you find it's within Windsor, Essex, or within Chatham-Kent County, you do have to email us to contact them for you. And this is because employers can often complain that if they have 100 students sending emails asking for jobs, it's harder for them to go through that entire mailbox for them. So since they're usually partnered with the university already, or that could be a potential partner for the university, if you find a job posting within Windsor, Essex, or Chatham-Kent County, and you're interested in applying for it, and it's not on My Success already, email us first, and we'll reach out on your behalf. That being said, if you find a job posting that isn't within Windsor, Essex, or Chatham County, you can apply to it on your own, and all we'll need to do is once you get that job offer, we just have to make sure it looks through some criteria first. With the 4 big ones being it has to be paid, it's full-time, it's 12 to 16 weeks in length, and is relevant to your program. So how do you actually start this job search? So the best place to actually do is just search online. There's plenty of resources out there. So Indeed, I know there's links posted in the Discord under the Career Co-op channel that help you with that. Apply to any company that you want. Once again, as long as it's not within Windsor, Essex, or Chatham-Kent. And if you've been confirmed a placement, what you have to do is make sure that it follows the criteria we're looking for. There's a huge laundry list that we include in the job competition manual on page 11. I'm not going to go through it because a lot of it is self-explanatory, but you have to answer yes to all of those questions. And if you're able to do that and you get a job offer, you have to make sure you send us the job posting, the job offer letter, the letter of employment, and any other additional documentation, so that way we can check it for ourselves too. So as I mentioned earlier, the big 4 requirements if you're doing a guided job search is it has to be paid, full-time, related to your program, and 12 to 16 weeks in length. In terms of full-time, that can be anywhere between 35 to 44 hours, depending on the employer. And placement terms are usually in the winter, summer, or fall. So January to April, May to August, or September to December. What's important to know too is you cannot take vacation time off during your work term. This is because the employer is hiring you to complete a job. So you can't take time off from your work. So if you're in it, you're absolutely committed to it. So just remember that you're going to be expected to work your Monday to Friday or whatever hours you're assigned. In terms of work term details, this won't apply to many of you if this is your first job competition. But if you want to return to a previous employer, there could be opportunity to do so. So you may want to reach out to your employer, or we'll reach out on your behalf, and we can confirm that. But just know that if you do get confirmed, you won't have access to job postings anymore. But I mean, if you want to return, it's a good sign anyway, so you probably don't want to go through the job competition. Cancellation of placements. It's very rare that you do have to cancel your placement, because as I said earlier, if you accept it, you have to 100% commit to it. But there are always situations that can happen for it. There's not a lot of situations we do accept for it. We take them as a case-by-case basis. But if there's a very extenuating circumstance that you need to cancel your placement, just let us know at co-op@uwindsor.ca and we'll discuss it further with you. In terms of salary, you'll be provided this information. Some of it you'll find on ranking day if it's available. And once you do find out your salary, you cannot negotiate it because it's already part of a confirmed placement. So if it's $15 an hour or $27 an hour, that's what the employer is stating for your contract, and you can't negotiate anything for there because you're a co-op student. Now, acceptance of your placement. So when it comes to the current job competition, so ignore the fall 2021, so winter 2022, if you want to request your previous employer, once again, just make sure you reach out to one of us so we can do it for you. And as we said earlier, if you do get confirmed for a placement, you must honor that commitment and you cannot cancel it unless it's for a super rare occasion that we give an excuse for it. Otherwise, if you do cancel it or you just drop it without telling us, what we'll do is we'll take you out of the co-op program and you will receive a failing grade. So if you do want to apply to a master's or a PhD in the future, that can look really bad on your transcript. So if an employer does contact you directly with an employment offer as well, what you do want to do is, of course, go back to us, to one of the employer relation co-op coordinators, or just send an email to co-op@uwindsor.ca. So regardless if you get an offer, if it's within Windsor, Chatham-Kent, or anywhere else, you do have to send that offer to us at the end just to confirm it. So if it's within Windsor and you want to apply, we have to do it on your behalf. But if you're applying for jobs and they're outside of Windsor and Chatham-Kent, you can do that. It's only once you finally get that employment offer, that's when every student has to finally give it back to us if you're doing your own guided job search. As for the employer's expectations, remember, as much as these are learning opportunities, you are getting paid to do a job, so you're expected to complete your work. They expect your application documents to be well-researched, complete, concise, and without errors. There are some employers out there who are still traditional, where if they see a mistake, they'll likely just toss out your resume. Personally, I don't agree with it still, but it's the reality we live in. It is important that we're the main point of contact for the employer, so don't call them directly if you're applying through My Success, for example. And employers do expect students to apply their positions and apply to positions that are unfilled to generate little interest to them too. So just know that UWindsor students aren't the only ones who are competing, because there are posting to many other schools as well. Employers may not repost, so if 1 week is done during the main round and you don't see that job again, it's likely they're not going to apply for a posting again because they may have found someone. And if they find that students aren't following the rules, they can start to lose faith in our processes as well, and they may not put job postings in UWindsor's site anymore, which could damage future students too if they want to apply for there. Of course, as I mentioned earlier as well, you do have 2 employer relations coordinators. So if you do need to talk to someone about it, you can email your employer relations coordinator. So either send an email to Jeff or Bill with your emails on screen. I don't assume that any of you are in the master's program because I think you're all in undergraduate science, so you don't have to worry about Sandra. Along with that, you'll be sent a calendar invite so you could talk through MS Teams or through a phone call, and each appointment would be about 30 minutes in length too. So that was my garbage information load of everything you have to know about the job competition. I do hope a lot of that makes sense. I know especially when I got to ranking day, everything started to connect a lot more. But what I'm going to do is go through a few frequently asked questions. So all the what ifs that I see in the Discord or that I spoke to my supervisor as well that students should know. So, can you find your own job outside of My Success? Yes. As we explained earlier, this is a guided job search. So before applying, review the guided job search requirements in the Transform Manual or your job competition manual. So once again, it's going to be that laundry list, along with those main 4 criteria we talked about earlier. So keep in mind, if it's within Windsor, Essex, and Chatham-Kent, and you do find a posting, you have to contact us and we'll reach out on your behalf. But if you do find a posting outside of that area, you could just apply on your own. And if you do eventually get an offer, that's when you'll tell us, I'm like, hey, listen, I interviewed, I got an offer. Can I go through with it? It will either approve it or disapprove it. What are some of the job match stats for co-op? So this is something I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about. But when it comes to the summer semester, about only 65 to 70% of students actually get a job from it. And then from winter and fall semesters, usually it's a 90% plus match rate. So what is important is that we cannot guarantee that you will find a placement. As much as we want to give everyone a job, the reality of it, it's a job market. So even if it was outside of co-op and you're applying jobs on your own, we all know that finding a job can be very difficult, especially if it's your very first tech role. And the reason why it's lower in the summer is because that's when a lot of people are finding their internships for the first time for co-op. So as I mentioned earlier, we had about 500 to 600 students to transform last semester. So there's a lot of students just in UWindsor alone looking for their first co-op placement. And you could be competing with senior level students and master level students as well if they're looking for placements. So just know that it is very competitive during the summer. What we do see statistically is that students generally apply to 65 to 70% of jobs, and they usually hear back from 10% of employers for interviews. However, I would say that this is not a good predictor whatsoever. A better predictor to see your performance in the job competition process will be more determined by how much time you put into your applications and learning those skills in order to make yourself marketable too. A good example of this could be when I was finding my first ever part-time job before I started university. I sent out 200 resumes down Walker Street, only got interviewed for 2 of them, did an absolutely terrible job of both interviews. I'm much smarter now and much more wise, so now I know what I did wrong. But if I just sent the same resume, and that's why I barely got any interviews back. But now usually when I apply for jobs, sure, there's a bit of experience under there. But after customizing my resume and all my documentation, it happens now where I can apply for 1 job and get 2 out of it. So once again, I always recommend really customizing your documents because employers will really look into the detail you put into it too. So, can I get a refund if I don't find a co-op placement? The answer for this is no. And that's because you already partook in Transform back in the fall 2021, and you're already partaking in the winter 2022 process. However, if you do decide to drop in the process in the middle of it, you won't have to pay those future payments. So take fall 2022, winter 2023, etc. The best way I like to think about it is if you went to go see a movie and you didn't like the movie, you can't get a refund for it because you watched the movie already. So sure, you may have you're going into expecting something else and you didn't really enjoy the movie after. It could be the same thing with the job competition where maybe just the luck of it for the job market was in your favor and you want a refund. Unfortunately, you can't refund the job competition part and the transform part, but if you drop then, you don't have to worry about paying those extra fees for future years. If I drop co-op, can I return in the future? No. Once you drop out of co-op, you cannot be accepted into it again. I know some computer science students, after their first or even second co-op placement, they decide to drop in, try to find internships on their own. Of course, there is nothing wrong with that if that's the route you want to take. The only thing I do want to be cautious of is there are some co-op or internship opportunities out there that say that you have to be required to be in a co-op program to apply for it. So if you drop co-op, find a posting that says you have to be in a program and you want to come back into it, then you cut your loss there. So we can't allow you back in. So just be very careful when making this decision. Can I work in the United States? So the general answer is yes, but you have to qualify for a US work permit and visa. And the best way to actually do it is if you already live within the United States, it's easier to get a job in there. Or otherwise you have to plan to move over to the United States to get that visa or work permit. And if you're thinking you want to work in Detroit, for example, and you'll just commute between Windsor and Detroit every day, unfortunately you can't do that. So if you want to qualify for a US placement and you want to go there in person, in order to qualify for that visa, you actually have to either be in there already or you have planned to move into the United States for your placement. Unfortunately, this is a US government decision, so we don't have anything about it. I know it's easy to blame co-op for it, but it's something that we can't get around either. But that is to say there's plenty of opportunities in Canada as well, so don't feel discouraged. So what if I cannot physically get to my interview? Well, if your interview is within Windsor, Essex, you must attend if it's an in-person interview. So that's because you are applying for it and you are making a commitment for the interview. Of course, a lot of them are going to be remote, but let's say you live in Windsor and by the off chance you get an in-person interview in Leamington and they say you do have to come in person for it, you are expected to follow through with it. because if you don't go through with it, it will count as one of your declines. Now, if the position is outside of Windsor Essex and they ask you for an in-person interview, you have the right to say, actually, you know what? I don't want to interview there because you don't want to take the train or drive from Windsor to Toronto, for example. Although, just keep in mind again, since COVID-19 is still prevalent, a lot of them will be virtual anyway. And on the off chance, especially if the employer contacts you directly, you could ask like, hey, you know what? That's a little out of the way for me. Do you mind if I could do this virtually as well? If they're adamant on being in person, of course, you have the option to say no if it's outside of Windsor. But just keep in mind, if you're declining an interview because you can't make it physically within Windsor, then that will count as one of your declines, and you can't use it on ranking day then. So, can you take vacation off during my placement? As we mentioned earlier, no, you cannot. You've been hired to work the full-time placement, so you cannot take time off, even if your employer agrees to it. Can I negotiate pay and the length of my placement? No. So once again, this is already determined based on your offer before you start, and once your salary and your length of placement is fixed, you can't change it. Can I quit my placement? So the general answer is no, because once again, if you accepted an offer, you have to commit to it. So this even goes to, let's say you're interviewing for a company, you said yes, 2 days later you hear back from another one, it was a more ideal one. Unfortunately, you do have to commit to the first one you said yes to. I know it's a bit of a cat and mouse game you have to play, but you'll just have to be strategic and hope for the best that employers get to you in time. Of course, there are rare exceptions, so if you're in your placement and you're having a really terrible time and things happen with it, contact us at co-op@uwindsor.ca first, and we'll investigate it from there to say if you're allowed, or we might have to say, you know what, you just have to tough it out for a little more. So, can you take a course while in co-op? Yes. So you're only allowed to take one course during your co-op placement if you wish to do so, but it has to be outside of your working hours. So this means even if it's a online course, but the regular hours are 1 p.m. to 2:30, and that's during your working hours, we won't allow it. If we do find out that you did enroll into the course without our permission and it's during your work hours, we'll actually remove you from the course ourselves as well. And if you do want to apply to take a course, we will need to send a form to My Success, or they can download for My Success, and then send it to co-op@uwindsor.ca, so that way we can approve it before you enroll into it too. Can international students work in their home country? Yes. So this means if you find a place within your own country or find a remote placement within Windsor and you're working from your own home country, you absolutely can do so. Just remember, if you do find your own job outside of My Success within your own home country, make sure once you get that employment offer, and even before that, look at the job competition manual to make sure you say yes to all those criteria. So is it full-time? Is it paid? 12 to 16 weeks in length? Related to your program, and all the other details we need. So, I've been talking for a lot now, because that's a lot of information to go through. But what I'll do is I'll give it over to Wahid now, and he'll explain his experience through the process to give you guys some tips too.
Yep. Alrighty, so I'm Wahid, or Wahid, however you want to say it. I'm a member of CSS. And yeah, so I'm also in the co-op program. I'm currently in it, and I'm currently in a work term right now. It's my second work term. And yeah, so when I came to the University of Windsor, as I'm sure most of you did, I'm not sure if you guys knew about the co-op program when applying to the University of Windsor. Because you can either be admitted with co-op from the starting, or you can be in just one of the programs without co-op, right? So when I came, I was in computer science with software engineering specialization, and that was without co-op. So you might be worried that, oh, you missed your chance of getting to co-op or whatnot, but that's not the case. So around the time you're about to start your second year, so right before fall semester of your second year, you will usually get an email from co-op, and that will allow you to apply into the co-op program. You just got to fill out, a form, an application basically. And if you get accepted, which in most cases you will, unless of course you dropped it before, like Kyle was talking about, then you might run into issues. But you should be able to get in, and then from there, most of you, if you're in first year or above, will have taken the Transform course already. So you guys already know the rundown of that, right? You guys had to make your resumes, make your cover letters, submit all of that stuff, do the readings, whatnot. And then finally you get to the work term, or sorry, the application semester, right? So that'd be this semester for most of you. Like Kyle said, they came out yesterday. So if you don't know that or didn't know that, probably get on that. So you should probably have your resume already done, either the one you had with, the Transform course, or you make your own afterwards using whatever criteria you see fit. So you make your resume, and for me specifically, I started applying from the first, main job postings, and I was one of the lucky people who got one in the main round. So I got my interview around February 10th or something. So it's almost at the end of the main round, but I got my interview. I did my interview. You basically get an email, you book it, you get a slot of times. So it's not actually fixed. I'm guessing sometimes an employer will give you a specific time, but usually you get a range of times you can choose from, because they're usually trying to interview many people. So you get to choose a time, you choose the time, and then you interview. Now, for the interview, there's there's a few things that you can do to prepare. As part of CSS, we have Abdulaziz, who is our career advisor, and you can talk to him to do a mock interview and have him look over your resume and that type of stuff. I'm sure Co-op also has the same types of resources that you can go to. So those are recommended. I know as a part of Transform, you will also be doing, or you also did do a mock interview. But basically, you just got to remember those tips you had. You can use them in your interview. But yeah, I had my interview, went fine, went well. And then the next day, I got an offer, and it was pretty simple, pretty painless experience for that portion of it. But yeah, besides that, the rest is history, really. I went back to the same company. So basically, if you went to a company in your first co-op and you liked them, they can offer you to come back, either extend a term, or they can have you come back for another co-op term later on. So I opted for going for a later co-op term, which ended up being this semester. But yeah, that's about it. A few tips that I could give you guys for this co-op application period. Apply to everything. You don't want to limit yourself. Okay, so if you want a software engineering position, that's great. Tailor your resume to that. Write cover letters or whatnot, expressing your interest in companies that have these software engineering intern positions, right? But you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? So apply for the IT stuff. Apply for stuff that doesn't seem too much related to CS or the specific field you want to be in. But try it anyways, right? Just apply for it. You can think of it as practice for the interview, honestly, if you're not too excited about that. But yeah, apply to everything. And if you do have a certain type of position in mind, tailor your resume to it. Again, we have Abdulaziz. You can contact here on the Discord. He'd be more than happy to help you with checking your resume to make sure it's tailored to whatever field you want to be in. Other than that, with the interview itself, the one tip I like giving is to interview the interviewer, because basically the less time you give them to have them ask you questions, the less time they have to figure out if you're a bad candidate or not, right? But even beyond that, you have to think of yourself as an asset, right? Because even though it's an internship, a co-op, right, and it could be your first one, your second one, or whatever, right, you are still bringing value to the company, right? You have to think of yourself as an asset. So you have to interview the interviewer. Make sure that it's a right place to work for you, right? And never go into an interview without questions, right? Always ask questions, because interviewers like seeing that. It shows interest in the company and shows that you're actually, engaged, interested in actually having this position, right? So always ask the interviewer questions. And other than that, yeah, that's about it. Just make sure that in the interview, you should make sure that your expectations are met and that they know what your expectations are, right? Because the worst thing that you could do is, interview for something, you got asked a bunch of questions, they like you, but you really don't know what you're doing, and then you start the co-op and you're like, this kind of isn't it. And, as Kyle was saying earlier, you can't really drop out that easily or quit a position that easily unless you have a really good reason. And not being interested in the work or something isn't a really good reason, right? So, yeah, always make sure you ask questions during an interview. Make sure that they know what you want, you know what they want, right? Make sure there's no confusion with that. And apply to everything. That's about it from me.
Awesome, and thank you so much. So yeah, so just like you mentioned too, a lot of valuable advice from there. A lot of it does align to what we recommend too with it. And from here on out, what I do want to say too before I forget is worst case scenario, you don't find a job for the summer semester. Don't worry, I have friends in the past, back when I was in business anyway, I had 5 friends. 3 of them just didn't find jobs, so they went to exchange instead. Had the time of their life, awesome job, really proud for them. One friend, he didn't actually get a job until round 3 when he finally got something. And my last friend, he didn't get a job position at all during the term. So what he did, he's just delayed his work term to another semester instead. And he got lucky there instead during round 1. He got an intern or co-op placement for the CRA, and now he's working there full time as well. So just remember, if you don't get a job at the end of this semester, it's not the end of the world. Just remember, the summer semester is usually the harder semester to get a job for anyway, especially if it's your very first co-op placement you're finding. But if that's the case, you can always go back to us, go back to Abdulaziz as well through the CSS Discord to get further help. And we're always there to help at the end of the day. So that, if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask them now. And if you don't feel like asking them right now, you can always email them to coop@uwindsor.ca as well. And thank you so much for coming today as well.
Alrighty, that's a wrap.
Yeah, all
That's
good.
questions.
Yeah, yeah. So if you guys have questions, feel free to open your mic. Yeah, it's an inspiring story. Awesome, glad to hear it. You could type them. I guess we're using the career and co-op channel to ask questions if you want to type them, I guess.
Sure.
Or actually events, I think.
Yeah, let's use events. If you guys have questions, let's use the events channel.
Awesome. Perfect. And you're welcome. Really glad to be here to give it.
Yeah, oh yeah, right. I forgot. Now you're unmuted.
Awesome. No, what if you get fired? Okay, yeah, that's a good point actually. It can happen. But if you do get fired, we will be notified as well, and what you'll do is you'll get an F on your transcript and you'll be dropped from the co-op program as well. Just because there are expectations we do expect of you because you are a co-op student. But just once again, note too that you probably have to do something really big to get fired, because I understand you're a student, you're learning, so if you make mistakes, it's fine. There's mentorship opportunities usually available. But if you get fired, you have to do something pretty bad usually to get to that place. And it doesn't happen very often at all. So don't worry that that's going to be a reality you have to face. So I see a question. What happens if we get a job offer and they say it's on site? Well, if it's a job offer and says on site, usually they'll tell that information to you in advance. So during the job offer process or during the interview. And once again, you will usually agree to that beforehand. So I know there's different things going on with COVID, so who knows, maybe midway in March, everyone's like, hey, you can go back into the office again. Just know that they will usually tell you that before that, so they won't drop that decision on you. They'll usually tell you in advance during the interview or for the offer or in your contract. They'll say, you know what, with all the changing times, it is possible that you could go back to the office. And they will ask, probably during the interview, will you be able to work in person if it goes to it too? So you won't usually get that out of the blue. Lucas, why does Amazon have the most applications on My Success? To be honest, I did not look at the job postings. I don't have access to them through my admissions or permissions on that account. So I can't confirm that. Who do we reach to for proofreading a resume? What you can do is you can either refer to Abdelaziz through the CSS Discord. I know he's done resume edits in the past, and it's great. You can also reach out to coop@uwindsor.ca as well. And from there, you'll likely get an email back from Linda, and she'll set up an appointment to look over your resume. And that also goes for cover letters and mock interviews as well. So for Cap, you also said, what if it's on site but you can't go? Once again, they'll usually tell you that in advance. So if you know that you can't go to it because, let's say, originally it was posted as a remote position, during the interview process, you say, you know what, actually you have to go to Toronto for it and you live in Windsor, then I would actually use one of your declines there. Jeremy, I wonder how often people get fired. Probably, yeah. My guess is probably not very often. I never heard any like big stories about it, so it's probably rare that it happens for it. Apparently, let's see. Old intern at Green Shield literally would sleep during the workday. Yeah, don't do that during your co-op placement, please. So you are there to work. And what's really nice too is since it's co-op placements, employers would usually give you a chance, usually like on a Friday afternoon, like for an hour or two, to just explore and work on side projects as well. Because it is a learning experience at the end of the day, and they understand you are co-op students.
There was another question about what happens if you have an interview scheduled during a class, particularly if it's during a graded lab session. I think you addressed this earlier in the presentation.
Good question. So if it's during a lab or during a class, the interview does take precedence. Just send an email to your professor or team in advance saying, like, you know what, I have an interview through co-op. Since it is through co-op, it's another university institution, so they get it. The only exceptions would be if it's an exam or a quiz, or if it's when you have another interview in place. So yeah, so if it's a lab they usually go to, just email your professor in advance saying, like, hey, you know what, I got an interview for co-op. They'll understand, and you'll just have to rearrange that because co-op interviews will take priority over it.
And then we had another question for you, Kyle. How many places did you apply to before your first placement?
Okay, I see all these other questions. I wasn't scrolling far enough. So for me personally, I actually never did co-op. To be honest, I was always a little jealous of my friends who did co-op back in business because I was hearing all these cool opportunities. Some people went to Germany, some people went to London. I was like, I'm stuck in Windsor. But even when I was applying for jobs on my own, so especially at the university, once you get that first experience underway, and you will find, especially for co-op too, it'll be a lot easier to get those second, third, fourth experiences in the future. So now, usually when I apply for a job, usually I'm sending out like 5 applications max, and it's just because I have so much experience under my belt. Of course, it's not for technical roles, so not for like software developer. I like more the teaching side of things. But once again, just know, especially for tech roles, if you are having a hard time your first time around, just know it's completely normal. You're not a failure. It's a very competitive job market out there, and you'll probably just need to learn a few additional skills and build some extra projects on your resume to promote them too.
Yeah. Like Jeremy said, he applied to 250 before he got his first placement. So it's not unheard of to go into the hundreds for your application. So Don't feel bad that you're like at 100 applications, you still haven't gotten anything.
Yeah. Exactly. Which I know it's a huge pain in the butt, which I completely understand, but it's just the nature of the job market, so.
And yeah, just do projects, extracurriculars, go to events. CSS has a bunch of events. Like we have Google Hashcode actually that's coming up soon. If you want to put something on your resume, that'd be something great. We give you guys certificates for participating. Just look around. What type of events are there going on? We have WinHacks, that type of stuff, hackathons, any hackathon really. Just attend, do something, right, and put it on your resume, and hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, and especially if you do mention those experiences, once again, you want to focus on the results of what you build and what skills you learned.
Correct.
You don't want to say you just attended the event, because I know when marking resumes last semester, I saw a lot of those. I'm like, I don't know what you did there. So I wasn't able to get a lot of value from it.
Yeah. That's why we give certificates.
Yeah.
For our events. So you do have something to put on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
Get involved with CSS, starting clubs, that type of stuff helps too. Shows involvement.
Yep, absolutely. And even if it's I know especially a lot of local companies I interviewed, even if it's like part-time jobs that you're going for, such as like Walmart or McDonald's, like you could put that on your resume too if you're lacking a lot of experience, because they do like to see that soft skill experience of like, okay, they have worked in a work environment before. So even if you just had volunteer projects on there, don't feel ashamed if you have to put on there. I know at least when I look at there, if I see like something for McDonald's or something, I know how busy that can be. I used to work in fast food, so like I give you props. Like I'm like I know how hectic that can be.
Yep.
Let's see. So what if I have some new projects and experiences put on the resume? Can I send a revised resume to the job posting I've already applied to? That's a good question. So the answer is going to be no. So once you've applied to a job posting, you can't resend that resume to it. An exception could be if you find that if you apply to the job in January and you saw the same job posting come up again in March, then you can send that revised resume over there. But once you apply your resume to there, you can't resend another one. So you got to commit to it. Should it be applying right away? And how competitive should it be at the beginning of the first round? And git commit. Yep, you got it, Lucas. Yeah, so I would recommend applying right away. So once again, job postings are available for the first week of round 1 right now, and they're going to close on the Tuesday. So probably a lot of people are going to apply to them right now because it's the first round of postings. So the more you apply to in advance, the sooner you can hear back from an employer for an interview as well. And how competitive should I be at the beginning of the first round? I would actually be very competitive with it because the idea is you don't want to be going into round 2 and round 3 and then deferring to a semester because it's going to be very busy with midterms and final exams and assignments. So the sooner you can find a co-op placement, the better. So I would recommend being very competitive earlier on. And next question. Does it look worse if you apply later at night or even the morning afternoon? To be honest, nope. Everything's good. As long as you meet the deadline, you're golden. I think I see a Roblox gift, which, yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, no, the 3 a.m. job hustle is real. I feel like that's where I do my best thinking too when I'm looking at job postings late at night. I'm like, am I making the right life decisions?
Yeah, that's when I applied to my co-op that I got the offer for, like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m.
There you go. Exactly. Awesome. Other than that, then it's 7:03. So I don't want to.
Mhm.
Oh, Cap, did you have a question?
I think it just has mic on.
Okay then.
There you go.
So with that, then it's 7:04 now. So I don't want to take up too much of your guys' night. So with that, if you do have any questions, feel free to email coop@uwindsor.ca. You'll probably hear an answer from either me or one of the other coordinators. But we'll get back to you within 1 to 2 business days, just because we want to make sure we give you the most accurate answer instead of going back and being like, hey, actually, I lied. This is the actual answer for it.
Sounds good.
Awesome. And with that, you're welcome, Justin, and thank you so much for everyone who attended today too. So if you want to find or review this, I believe they've been recording this presentation. I'll give them the PowerPoint as well, so that way you guys can see it too. And all this information will be on my success team. And if at any point you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, you need some help, feel free to reach out to us. That's why we're there. We're here to help you.
Nice. Alrighty, see you later.
All right. And